The morning sunlight slipped through the torn blinds of Jacob Mercer's small Ohio apartment, landing on a sight he never could have imagined. Standing barefoot in his narrow kitchen, wearing his oversized gray cotton shirt, was Victoria Hale, the most powerful female CEO in Chicago's tech world. Her long auburn hair fell loosely over her shoulders, and she looked nothing like the sharp, unapproachable executive who had once made grown men tremble in boardrooms. Jacob froze in the hallway, heart pounding, unsure if he was awake or still trapped in a dream he didn't deserve. Before we go any further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of unexpected connections, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us that life can change overnight. Jacob was not the kind of man fate usually favored. At 34, he was a single father raising his 8-year-old son Noah in a 2-bedroom apartment above a closed-down hardware store in Columbus, Ohio. 3 years earlier, his wife, Lauren, had passed away after a sudden illness that left him drowning in grief and medical bills. The world had not paused for his heartbreak. It had simply kept spinning while he worked double shifts as a night maintenance supervisor at Hale Digital Systems, the very company Victoria owned. To Jacob, Victoria had always seemed untouchable. She arrived at the office in sleek black cars, surrounded by assistants and security, her heels echoing through marble floors like a warning bell. He had only seen her up close once, during a company safety inspection when she shook his hand and thanked him for keeping the building running smoothly. Her eyes had been cool but observant, as though she saw more than she let on. The night everything changed had started like any other. Jacob had stayed late fixing a burst pipe in one of the executive floors during a brutal winter storm. Snow lashed against the windows, and the city declared roads nearly impassable. Around midnight, as he gathered his tools, he noticed a lone figure in the dim hallway. It was Victoria. Her car had broken down on the highway while she was returning from a charity gala, and the storm had stranded her back at the office after a driver managed to get her there safely. Every hotel nearby was fully booked due to power outages. Jacob had offered what little he had without thinking. He knew what it felt like to have nowhere to go. His apartment was small, but it was warm, and Noah was spending the night at his grandparents' house. Victoria had hesitated at first, pride flickering in her eyes, but exhaustion finally won. And so the wealthiest woman in the building followed the quiet maintenance supervisor into the storm. Now, seeing her in his shirt, Jacob felt exposed. His home was humble, filled with mismatched furniture and children's drawings taped to the refrigerator. The carpet was worn, and the coffee maker rattled when it brewed. But Victoria did not look uncomfortable. She looked peaceful. The night before had been awkward but unexpectedly easy. They had sat at his small kitchen table eating leftover spaghetti while the storm howled outside. Without the armor of her tailored suits and corporate persona, Victoria had seemed almost fragile. She had asked about Noah, about how Jacob balanced work and fatherhood. He had shared stories of bedtime routines and science fair disasters, of learning to braid hair for school plays before realizing Noah only needed help tying his sneakers. She had listened intently, her sharp executive gaze softening. Jacob had learned something too. Victoria had grown up in a modest home in rural Pennsylvania, raised by a single mother who worked 3 jobs. Every scholarship, every promotion, every ruthless business decision had been fueled by a fear of returning to that instability. She had built an empire, but somewhere along the way, she had built walls just as high. Standing in his kitchen now, Victoria turned toward him with a look he would never forget. There was no arrogance in her expression, no CEO authority. There was vulnerability. She told him that she had not slept that peacefully in years. She confessed that being in his home, hearing about Noah, watching the way Jacob carefully folded his son's laundry before bed, had reminded her of what she had sacrificed for success. She admitted that she had been chasing security so fiercely that she had forgotten what security truly meant. Jacob felt speechless, not because she was powerful, but because she was human. Over the next few weeks, something subtle shifted. Victoria began appearing more often at the Columbus branch. She claimed it was to oversee renovations, but Jacob sensed there was more. She asked him for his opinions on employee conditions, on ways to improve morale. When he spoke about the struggles of hourly workers juggling childcare and rising rent, she listened, and then she acted. The company introduced flexible scheduling and expanded healthcare benefits within months. At home, Jacob found himself thinking about her more than he should. He battled guilt, unsure if he was betraying Lauren's memory. Grief had been his constant companion, a heavy coat he wore even in summer. But he also felt something unfamiliar stirring: hope. Noah noticed the change first. He asked why his dad smiled at his phone now. Victoria faced her own battles. The board questioned her frequent trips to Ohio. Investors whispered that she was losing her edge. For years, she had thrived on being untouchable. Now, she found herself driving 3 hours just to attend Noah's school robotics competition, standing in a crowded gymnasium beside Jacob as children cheered around them. The real challenge came when tabloids caught wind of the CEO spending time with a maintenance supervisor. Headlines painted Jacob as opportunistic. Online comments were cruel. Jacob considered stepping away, believing he was damaging her reputation. He had endured enough loss he could survive another. But Victoria refused to retreat behind her walls again. For the first time in her career, she addressed the rumors publicly. She spoke about dignity, about how character was not measured by salary but by heart. She acknowledged Jacob not as an employee but as a man who had shown her kindness when she needed it most. The backlash slowly turned into admiration. One evening in early spring, Jacob returned home to find Victoria sitting at his kitchen table with Noah, helping him build a small solar-powered car for a school project. The scene felt surreal. The world outside still buzzed with stock prices and corporate strategy, but inside that apartment, there was laughter. Jacob realized that love had not arrived in fireworks. It had arrived quietly, through shared meals, through late-night conversations about fear and ambition, through watching Victoria kneel on the living room floor to fix a broken toy. It had grown in the space where two exhausted adults chose honesty over pride. Before this story comes to a close, take a moment to comment the words "second chances are real" if you believe that life can surprise us when we least expect it. The final turning point came a year after that snowstorm. Hale Digital Systems announced the opening of a new community innovation center in Columbus, aimed at providing free technology training to single parents and underprivileged youth. At the ribbon-cutting ceremony, Victoria stood beside Jacob and Noah, not as a distant executive, but as part of a family. She credited the idea to the lesson she learned in a small apartment during a winter storm, that success means nothing if it cannot be shared. Jacob looked at the crowd and thought about the man he had been, tired, grieving, resigned to surviving rather than living. He had not chased a CEO, he had simply opened his door on a cold night. And that simple act of kindness had reshaped both their worlds. That morning memory, waking up to find Victoria in his shirt, remained etched in his heart, not because of romance or shock, but because it symbolized something deeper. It was the moment two people set aside titles and fear. It was the moment walls began to fall. Noah later told his father that storms are scary, but sometimes they clear the sky. Jacob understood then that life's harshest nights can carry unexpected gifts. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that love can grow in the most unlikely places and that kindness can rewrite destinies, please engage with this video. Like it, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and let us know your thoughts in the comments. Your support keeps stories like this alive. In the end, Jacob did not wake up to a CEO in his shirt. He woke up to possibility. And sometimes, that is far more powerful.